Have you ever noticed how some people seem to carry an invisible pressure to prove themselves? Almost as if every conversation, every interaction, and every disagreement is an opportunity to establish dominance or control, even when the situation doesn't demand it.
And what's even more interesting is that, on the surface, this behavior can look like confidence or strength. But when you look a little deeper, it often reveals something far more complex: an internal struggle with self-worth and perception.
In psychology, this pattern is often referred to as Napoleon Syndrome, a term that has become popular in everyday language, but carries layers of meaning that most people never fully explore.
If you enjoy breaking down human behavior and understanding what really drives people beneath the surface, make sure to subscribe to Mind Science Simplified, because we explore the psychology behind everyday actions in a way that changes how you see the world.
Napoleon Syndrome is commonly used to describe a behavioral pattern in which individuals, often stereotypically shorter people, display exaggerated assertiveness, aggression, or dominance as a way to compensate for perceived physical or social limitations.
However, reducing it to just height would be an oversimplification, because at its core, this phenomenon is not about physical stature, but about how individuals perceive themselves in comparison to others, and how they attempt to bridge that perceived gap.
In many cases, the behavior isn't even conscious, because the brain is constantly trying to maintain a sense of identity and self-worth, even if that means adopting behaviors that seem excessive or disproportionate from the outside.
Interestingly, the term itself comes from Napoleon Bonaparte, who is often remembered as a short, overly aggressive leader, even though historical evidence suggests that his height was fairly average for his time.
This misunderstanding largely came from differences in measurement systems between countries, which were then amplified by political propaganda, eventually turning Napoleon into a symbolic representation of overcompensation. To truly understand this pattern, we need to go deeper into psychology, particularly the work of Alfred Adler, who introduced the idea of the inferiority complex, which suggests that feelings of inadequacy can shape behavior in powerful and sometimes unexpected ways.
According to Adler, when individuals perceive themselves as lacking in some way, whether physically, socially, or emotionally, they often attempt to compensate by overdeveloping other traits, sometimes to an extreme degree.
This is why someone who feels overlooked might become excessively competitive, or why someone who feels physically inadequate might adopt an unusually dominant personality, not because they are naturally that way, but because they are trying to rebalance their internal sense of worth. And the key thing to understand here is that the behavior is not random. It is a psychological strategy, even if it is not always a healthy or effective one. One of the biggest misconceptions about Napoleon Syndrome is that it is limited to physical height, when in reality, the same psychological pattern can emerge in response to any perceived deficiency.
This could include financial status, social recognition, intelligence, attractiveness, or even emotional validation, because the brain does not distinguish between different types of lack. It only responds to the feeling of being less than.
From a neurological perspective, this behavior can be understood as a form of ego defense, where the brain attempts to protect its sense of identity by compensating for perceived weaknesses.
When your self-image is threatened, your mind doesn't passively accept that discomfort. It actively tries to restore balance, sometimes by amplifying behaviors that create a temporary sense of control or superiority.
If you recognize these patterns in yourself, the first step is not to suppress them, but to understand what underlying insecurity is driving them, because awareness is what allows real change to begin.
And instead of trying to prove your worth externally, shifting toward building internal confidence through skill, self-acceptance, and emotional awareness creates a far more stable and authentic sense of identity.
So the next time you encounter someone who seems overly dominant or constantly trying to prove themselves, Take a moment to look beyond the surface behavior and consider what might be driving it. Because sometimes, what appears to be strength is actually a carefully constructed response to insecurity, and understanding that can completely change how you interpret human behavior.
If you enjoyed this, subscribe for more Psychology Made Simple.
Because understanding people starts with understanding the mind.